with a sunshiny smile. Heard the roar of a plane as it sailed through the sky. To a playmate she cried with a bright twinkling eye, my daddy rides that ship in the sky. Oh, my daddy rides that ship in the sky. My daddy rides that ship in the sky. Mama's not afraid and neither am I, 'cause my daddy rides that ship in the sky. My way around the world at the public library. Read all the songs through class along with that. I'm gonna exercise my mind. I'm gonna open up my heart. I'm gonna make everything feel new. Tickle my funny bone. I'm gonna tickle my funny bone. I'm gonna tap my series on. I'm gonna read all the songs through. I'm gonna put on a cape and fly to France with Captain Underpants, with Captain Underpants, with Captain Underpants. I'm gonna put on a cape and fly to France with Captain Underpants. Read all the songs through. Amplify my mind. I'm gonna amplify my mind. I'm gonna open up my heart. I'm gonna make everything feel new. Tickle my funny bone. I'm gonna tickle my funny bone. I'm gonna tap my series on. I'm gonna read all the songs through. I want you to imagine if you went back maybe 200 years ago, and instead of living in the kind of house you live in now, you live in a log cabin back in the woods. You got those logs from the trees growing around you, and you and your neighbors, you cut those logs down and you put them together into a house. And you wouldn't go down to Walmart for your food. You'd grow some corn and some other stuff in your garden, and you'd have some chickens to get your eggs. And for your meat, you might eat a hog, part of a hog that your dad or mom butchered, but most likely, most of the time, you might be eating some food that you went out and hunted. And that's a hunting dog, and he's treeing some animals up there. Might be those raccoons. That's from a separate picture. I'm going to show you a little dog that you might want me to make for you out of this balloon, okay? I'm going to make a little snout, and put some ears on him. Let's give him a neck, and a couple of legs. One, two. Give him a little body. And dog, and his name was Blue. Had a dog, and his name was Blue. Had a dog, and his name was Blue. Extra $5, he's a good dog too. Here's your call. Here, Blue, you good dog, you. Can you sing that with me? Here, Blue, you good dog, you. Well, I shouldered my gun and I tooted my horn. Gonna catch a possum in the new round corn. Old Blue barked and went to see. He'd cornered a possum in a cinnamon tree. Here, Blue, you good dog, you. Here, Blue, you good dog, you. You know, old Daniel Boone had a dog and his name was Blue. He was a really, really good hunting dog. And one day Daniel was out hunting. They were running across a field. Out of the distance flew an arrow. It came so fast that when it hit old Blue, it split it right in two. The front half split away from the back half, just like that. Well, Daniel was always prepared. He had some super glue in his pocket. He grabbed that super glue, he slapped a little bit on the front end, he slapped a little bit on the back hand, and he held them together. Count to 5 with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Blue was all back together again. He blinked his eyes. He licked Daniel's cheek. He was all back together and barely lost a heartbeat. Now, the only problem was Daniel was in such a hurry that when he put them back together, he put the back end on upside down with his legs facing up and down. And you know, super glue, once it's stuck, you can't do anything about it. So that's the way glue was for the rest of his days. And you might think that would be a problem, but it wasn't, because, see, glue would run for a while on his front legs, and when he'd get winded, why, just flip right over on his back. So it didn't turn out so bad after all. That's old glue. I'm going to put him over here with these dog books, because I'm making him to encourage you to check out some good books about dogs. Now, if you're reading chapter books and you want to read a good old hunting story, and parents, if you want to read one to your kids, try Where the Red Fern Grows, about a boy who has 2 hunting dogs. If you want just a plain old feel-good story, try Because of Winn-Dixie. The girl moves to a new town with her pa. They live in a trailer. She doesn't know anybody. She feels lonely. One day she's walking around in Winn-Dixie supermarket, and she sees a stray dog running all over. And she convinces her dad to let her adopt that dog. She names him Winn-Dixie. And everywhere that dog runs off to, she follows, and she meets somebody new. Turns out real well. And if you're a 4, 5, 6-year-old, I highly recommend the Henry and Mudge series. Raise your hand if you've read any of the Henry and Mudge books. Good. They are fun, aren't they? That Mudge is the cutest dog, but boy, does he slobber. And here is an old song that somebody put a little story to about a boy who had a dog named Blue. It's good to sing along with if you can keep up with me. It's pretty fast. Oh yeah, we're bound for the mountain, bound for the mountain, bound for the mountain. Over the mountains, the hills, and the fountains, away with the chase away. Rover, see 'em, rover, catch 'em, over the mountains, the hills, and the fountains, away with the chase away. Got it? Well, one time there was a little boy whose father would always go out hunting. Little boy would have hear those hounds baying all night long, and he'd want to go too. But every time he'd ask his pa, "Pa, can I go too?" His pa would say, "No, you're too young. Your legs are too short, and you get left behind. We'd have to come back and get you. You better wait till you're a little older." But that little boy, he begged and pleaded. He pleaded and begged until finally his father said, all right, I reckon you can come with us. Well, they set out pretty fast across those fields. They went across the creek, got the bridge into the holler, and that little boy, he was keeping up with them for a while. But those dogs, they started to go faster and faster. The little boy was going slower and slower and slower and slower, and finally he got into some rush, and finally he tripped over a log. He got himself up, and he couldn't hear those dogs anymore. They were too far ahead of him. Took out his horn and he blew. Oh, where are you? Oh, where are you? All he could hear was that old owl. Those old mosquitoes. And that old bullfrog. Took out his horn again and blew it. Oh, where are you? Oh, where are you? Well, off in the distance, he thought he heard a little something. He said, I think that's them. I hear them come around the mountain now. Here they come. They're coming to get me right now. He said, well, down for the mountain, down for the mountain, down for the mountain. Over the mountains, the hills, and the fountains, away with the chase away. Rover, see 'em, rover, catch 'em, over the mountains, the hills, and the fountains, away with the chase away. Listen to the hound dogs, they sounding right over the way. All night long till the break of dawn, merrily the chase goes on. It's over the mountains, the hills, and the fountains, away with the chase away. like he could tell you a story, couldn't he? What about those guys? I don't know what story they would tell. Well, I've got a story about a monkey. It's been around a long time in a picture book version by Paul Galdone, and we've got it up here. You can check it out afterwards. So there was this monkey. He was a really curious monkey, kind of like Curious George. And he was out there one day, out on his tree, swinging around and eating a banana. And up the river came a crocodile. So he said to that monkey, he said, well, how's that banana taste? Oh, the monkey said, it's good. Crocodile said, I bet you it's not as good as a mango. And mango said, monkey, what's a mango? He said, a mango is the most delicious fruit in the entire world. He said, you haven't lived until you have tasted a mango. Well, he said, where can I get one of those? He said, well, just so happens there's an island up here a little ways, and there's a mango tree on that island. I'll take you over there. Well, you think that's a good idea? Probably not. Crocodile might eat a monkey. He said, you're not going to eat me, are you? He said, oh, no. He said, trust me. He said, I'm a vegetarian. No. It seemed pretty good for a while he was just riding along on that crocodile. I'll paint him up in just a minute. But they were riding along, going through the water. They went through the shallow part, and that was okay. He said, Mr. Crocodile, this is a pretty nice ride. Thank you for taking me along. But then they got to the deep part of the water, and when they got to that deep part, suddenly the crocodile dove down, swam along at the bottom of the stream, and that old monkey, he couldn't breathe. Finally, the crocodile came up to him. Oh, he said, Mr. Crocodile, what'd you do that for? He said, you nearly drowned me. Well, said the crocodile, first I'm going to drown you, and then I'm going to eat you. Eat me, he said. You told me you were a vegetarian. He said, I lied. He thought, and he said, Mr. Crocodile, he said, I wish I'd known that you wanted to eat me, because if I did, I would have brought my heart along with me. You what? Said the crocodile. Said, I left my heart back there in the tree. I would have brought it if I knew you were going to eat me. Well, let's go get it, said the crocodile. Oh, said the monkey, you sure you don't want to take me to that mango tree first? He said, no, let's go get your heart. Back they went, back to that island. Monkey got off, climbed up that tree. You reckon he went back to where that crocodile was? No. No, sirree, Bob, he said, bye-bye, Mr. Crocodile. I fooled you. I had my heart right here all the time. Give him a couple of eyes. Give him a little mouth. Kind of a big mouth, to tell you the truth. Give him a little red tongue, and he'll be ready to go. Does anybody recognize that gorilla with a kitten? A gorilla named Coco, right? A real gorilla, and Coco has had several kittens for pets. The first one's name was Ball. Called her Ball because she was like a ball of fur. And Coco speaks about 200 or 300 words in sign language, and when Ball died, he was really upset and told his keeper all about it, and they got him another kitten. That's Coco. But going back to the stories about trickster heroes, there's Anansi from Africa, there's Brer Rabbit from the United States in the South, and there's Cooey the guinea pig from South America, from the Andes Mountains. Lots of funny tricks that Cooey plays on Tio Antonio the fox. The very end of the book, he goes to work for the farmer, and he goes out stealing his alfalfa at night, and the farmer catches him with his sticky doll, ties him up, and he's going to cook him up the next day. But Tio Antonio the fox comes along, and he says, Cooey, what are you doing there tied up? He said, the farmer wants me to marry his daughter and eat roast chicken every day. We're people. We're people. We're animals. We're animals. We're flowers. We're flowers. And birds in flight. I said we're people. We're people.
But Anansi, she said, whatever you do, don't go and touch those beans. They're very hot and you could burn yourself. What did I say, Anansi? He said, I won't touch those. Himself standing right in front of that pot of beans. He said, it won't hurt if I just take a taste. Grandma doesn't have to know. He took it out of the bowl. He blew on it. It was good. Maybe just one more. Maybe another. I've had 3. A 4th one's not going to make any difference. Well, Anansi got to thinking he'd like some more of that, and he wanted it to cool faster, so he took off his hat and he put the beans in the hat. Well, the birds suddenly flew in the kitchen window where Anansi was, and the neighbors started pounding on the door. They said, Anansi, let us in, let us get those birds, they're eating Grandma's beans. Well, there was Anansi, all those people at the door, and Anansi had those beans in his hat. You think he wanted them to see him with the beans in his hat? No. He had to hide them. Where do you think he could hide them?
Put it on his head.
Put it on. That's exactly what Anansi did. He grabbed those beans, he put them on his head. But you know, those beans had not had a chance to cool yet. And then they started to leave and they saw Anansi standing there like this. They said, Anansi, what's wrong? He said, nothing's wrong. You can leave now. You can leave now. Well, Anansi was starting to sweat. The sweat was pouring down his face. He was starting to cry from the heat. They said, Anansi, no, we need to help you. We're your friends, Anansi. Let us help you. Anansi just wanted them to leave. They wouldn't leave. He said, no, it's all right. It's all right. They're fine. I'm fine. You can leave now. His voice was getting higher and higher. They said, Anansi, let us help you. And Anansi was going like this, and he grabbed his hat and he started to move it around, to move the beans around. They said, Anansi, what are you doing? He said, it's a dance. It's a dance. I said, what kind of dance? He said, it's a hat-shaking dance. It's the hat-shaking dance. They said, Anansi, that's a wonderful dance. Let us do it with you. So they all got up and they started doing the hat-shaking dance. Go ahead, do it with me. And they started shaking that hat every now and then. They go, woo, woo, woo. They have lots of wonderful markets in Latin America. There's a food market. There's a market with lots of crafts like I've got there. There's my sister-in-law and my nephews in a market in San Miguel de Allende in Mexico. And here's a song about going to the market to buy some musical instruments. There's Jose Luis Orozco. This comes from a book of his called Diez Deditos, and other playwrights and action songs from Latin America. Here's another book with other great songs. There'll be a guitar, there'll be a clarinet and clarinete, there'll be a violin, and then a cello, which is pronounced violon in Spanish, and there'll be a tambor or a hand drum. This is in Spanish, but it's very, very simple. And I know that you guys can learn it. The song says, En la pulga de San Jose, yo compré una guitarra. Yo compré una guitarra. That means I bought a guitar. Here we go. Here's how it goes. En la pulga de San Jose, yo compré una guitarra. Try that with me. En la pulga de San Jose, yo compré una guitarra. Okay, here's your guitar. Hold up the neck with one hand, strum with the other. Ta-da-ta-da-ta-da, la guitarra. Ta-da-ta-da-ta-da, la guitarra. Then sing, by usted, which means you go to. By usted, a la pulga de San Jose. Tun, tun, el tun, tun. Lon, lon, violon. Lean, lean, violin, nette, 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 clarinette, ta-da-ta-da-ta-da, la guitarra. By usted, a la pulga de San Jose. By usted, a la pulga de San Jose. Very good. You've probably heard about fables, which teach a lesson.
There's another kind of story that's sort of like that. We call it a wisdom tale. It's maybe not, doesn't say what the lesson is usually, but you can see what the lesson is. And I want to tell you a wisdom tale that comes from China. In this book, it's called The Empty Pot. And it's about a man who was the emperor. China used to be ruled by emperors. And this emperor was getting very old. He was going to die, and he didn't have any children, didn't have a son or a daughter to pass on being an emperor to. So he thought, well, how am I going to pick somebody who will be the next emperor? Who would be a good emperor? He thought, I don't know. And then he was sitting out in his garden one day, and he loved plants so much. He said to himself, he said, I know, I'll let the plants decide. And put out word that he wanted all the boys and girls in China who would like to be the next emperor to come to his palace and see him. He said to them, I'm going to give each of you a flower seed. And you take that flower seed home and do the best you can to grow a flower with that seed. Now, he said, you've got to use that flower seed so it'll be fair. There was one boy there whose name was Pink, and he just loved the garden. He was the best gardener. He put in that seed in some rich soil, and then he watered it, and he weeded it, and he came out every morning to see if he could see his plant peeking up out of the ground. So every morning he came, and every morning he saw the same thing. There was nothing growing. He changed the dirt out. He thought, maybe I don't have good enough dirt. And he got a bigger pot, but he got the same results. Nothing would grow. Well, the little boy was feeling really discouraged. He thought to himself, maybe I should get another seed. Well, what do you think? Should he get another seed? The emperor said to use that one. You think it'd be okay to kind of switch the seeds? No, he didn't think so either. He thought, well, he said to use that seed, and I've done my best, he said. I'll just have to take him this. Well, in about 3 months' time, it was time to go back to the emperor and show him what they had. When he got to the emperor's palace, all these boys and girls were arriving, and they had the most beautiful plants. There were flowers with red and yellow and orange and pink and magenta and purple flowers, beautiful flowers. And what that little boy had was an empty pot. An empty pot. He felt ashamed. He felt embarrassed. He saw all those boys and girls with beautiful flowers, but he went and he just stood there, and in a little while the emperor came out to the courtyard where all the boys and girls and their parents were gathered. And you know, he looked out at all those beautiful flowers, and you'd think he would have been smiling, wouldn't you, to see such beautiful flowers? But he wasn't. He was frowning. Just like that. Until he saw that little boy with that empty pot. When he saw the little boy, he smiled. He went over to him. He said, what happened? Why don't you have a flower in that pot? The little boy explained. He said, I put in the seed, I put in good soil, I watered it, I weeded it, I did everything he could. He said, I tried my best, but nothing would grow. The emperor nodded his head. He put his arm around that little boy, and the two of them turned around and they faced everybody, and he said, this will be the next emperor of China. You know what had happened? Anybody know why he did that? He said, I don't know where the rest of you got your seeds, he said. The seeds I gave you were boiled. None of them would grow, he said. You must have all the rest of you gone and gotten another seed like I told you not to do. This is the only boy who followed instructions, who was honest and hardworking, and I'm sure he's going to make a fine emperor. And that little boy grew up to be a kind and just and very wise emperor. And that is the story of the empty pot. Now let me ask you a question. That's what's called a wisdom tale. What's the wisdom in that? What do you suppose that tale is trying to tell us? To be truthful. Yep. Okay, here's the sign for grow. A seed under the ground. Here's your hand. It's the surface. Comes up. Gonna make this garden grow. Turns into a flower, okay? Inch by inch and row by row. Gonna make this garden grow. Get yourself a hoe in your hand. All I need is a rake and hoe. Some more sign language. And a patch of fertile ground. What is that? Next part starts to say inch by inch and row by row. Get a big sack of seeds. Hold it up with this hand. Reach in with your other hand. Get a handful and scatter it out. Please bless these seeds I sow. Please warm them from below till the rain comes tumbling down. Okay? Now let's see if you can do your part with me playing the guitar. You ready? Inch by inch and row by row, flower grow. Gonna make this garden go. Rake and hoe. All I need is a rake and hoe and a patch of fertile ground. Inch by inch and row by row. Sowing seeds, please bless these seeds I sow. Please warm them from below till the rain comes tumbling down. And there I am at my friend Wagatsama's house way up in the country. Does that look like me? It doesn't, but that's me 50 years ago. That's me in 1970, 48 years ago. And I'm smashing some soybeans. And that's a little neighborhood festival. They're doing an old dance with those strange masks on, and a woman and her baby in the crowd watching them. That's my friend Wagatsama with me. We're at Deer Park. The deer are tame. There are many beautiful, beautiful parks there. And there I am in the Japanese Alps, and I stayed in a little cabin overnight and talked with that girl in Japanese with my dictionary. Met lots of friendly people there. It's wonderful to travel around to different countries and cultures, and you know, if you can't do it yourself, taking a plane or a train, you know how you can do it? Come to the library and read a book, and you'll learn all about beautiful countries. Oh, pirate stuff. I know you like pirate stuff, don't you? Everybody thinks pirates are fascinating. Yeah, well, there's some good, silly pirate stories, and then there's some real stuff. Here is a pirate sword. Make it for you really quick. And of course, like the others, you can get one of these if you like afterwards. But you got to be careful with these. These are very sharp, so be careful how you use them. I don't want to hear that, somebody was in the hospital because Mr. Sundell made them a sword and they accidentally cut off their sister's arm or something like that. You know what? I wouldn't believe it. I just wouldn't believe that. Somehow I know that these swords are not going to do that, but they are fun. They are fun. And there it is. There's a pirate sword for you. Little quickly. Here's my favorite one, though. Edward and the Pirates. Not quite as funny, but kind of funny in a quiet way. You see, Edward loved to read. And when he would read, he would feel like he was right in the story. That's one of the great things about reading. While he'd read about Joan of Arc, that he was defending her, he'd read that he was sliding down the rope to help out Robin Hood. Yeah. And one day he was over at the library and there were some men watching him. He didn't see them. What kind of men were they? Pirates. They were pirates, exactly. And that night they showed up in his bedroom. And you know what they wanted? They wanted his book. He had a book about buried treasure. They said, "Come on, give us your book." He said, He said, "I checked that out of the library with my library card. You want that book, go to the library and check it out yourself." Well, they said, "Listen, we'll give you some buried treasure if you let us have that book." Nothing doing. They said, "Listen here, you're going to have to walk the plank if you don't give us that book." pulled out his sword. He said, "You better watch it, you're going to wake my mommy." Sure enough, in comes his mom, looking a lot like Joan of Arc, and pins those pirates right against the wall. Whew, that little boy felt sorry for him. He says, "Mommy," he said, "I don't think it really meant anything." He said, "They just want this book. Here, I'll tell you what." He says, "Okay, I'll let you borrow it for a little bit if you bring it back to me." Well, he hands it over to the pirate captain. The pirate captain takes that book and he kind of turns to the rest of the pirates, and they kind of get in a huddle and they talk for a minute. And then the pirate turns around and he hands that book back to Edward. "They can't read," he says. "They can't read." So Edward, being a nice guy, he reads the book to him. His parents say, "Now don't stay up too late. Make sure you don't stay up too late." I guess she's not scared of those pirates. They're just storybook pirates anyway. They won't do much harm. And that's the story of Edward and the Pirates. What do you think? I like it too. It's one of my favorite books. But now, of course, you older kids, and maybe some of you younger ones, know that real pirates weren't quite as nice as the pirates in those books. They attacked a lot of ships, and they stole stuff, and when they didn't give it to them real quick, they'd kill them and take it. One of the fiercest, maybe the fiercest, was Blackbeard. He was called Black because of that beard. And if you look close, you'll see this smoke coming out of his head. What he used to do to look scary was he put some slow-burning fuses into his beard. This is a true story. And when he would be attacking, people would see this crazy guy with smoke coming out of his head. And the idea was they'd surrender quicker, right? And they often did. He finally got killed when Lieutenant Robert Maynard went after him. They threw his body overboard, and the legend says that he was so mean his body swam around that ship 3 times before it sunk. Blackbeard the pirate. All right, going to tell you a little bit of one more tale, and this is maybe my favorite kind. The big kids especially enjoy this. These are fairy tales, and we may think of fairy tales in terms of movies that have been made by Walt Disney. But the original ones of these fairy tales are often very gritty. What tale is this? Rapunzel. And that one is? Red Riding Hood. And what about that one? Sleeping Beauty. Most of these stories were collected by 2 brothers, Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. Rumpelstiltskin and Rump is a chapter book based on that that's wonderful reading. The Brothers Grimm, Hansel and Gretel, and A Tale Dark and Grim based on that. These new novels are great. Whatever After, great reads for 3rd graders. A brother and sister fall through a mirror into different fairy tales, and they kind of mess things up when they arrive. And here's the one I want to tell you a little about. It's called The 6 Swans. There was once a queen who had 6 sons, but what she wanted more than anything else in life was a daughter. And one day, she was looking out the window and she saw a mother and a daughter walking along. And they looked so happy. They were talking to each other. They were laughing. Without thinking, really, she said to herself out loud, "Oh, if I only had a daughter, I would give my 6 sons." Well, she should have thought about that, because 2 seconds later, an old woman appeared in the room before her, and she said, "That's a terrible thought. So you learn a lesson for him. I will grant your wish for you. I will give you a daughter, and on the day that your daughter is born, you will lose your 6 sons." And so she said that she wanted all of her sons gathered round her on the day that she gave birth. They all needed to be in the room with her, and she wanted all the doors guarded. There was a sound of wind, and the wind pushed open the window and came roaring through, and she looked up to see 6 swans flying out that window. And she looked to where her sons had been, and they were gone.
Well, her husband was heartbroken, and she was pretty sad as well. But you know, if that thought she had came from evil, there was nothing evil in the daughter. She was the kindest, the sweetest, the most loving and compassionate daughter that she could have. And she was a happy girl until she was 12 years old. She knew nothing about ever having had 6 brothers. And then one day she began to hear stories, and she pestered her mother, and she kept asking her mother, tell me about this, tell me about this, tell me about this. And finally her mother did. Took her breath away. And that night, on her own, in secret, she left the castle, and she went off into the woods, and she walked through the night and through the morning and through the afternoon, and late that evening, as it was just getting dark, she found a cabin, and she looked through the window and she saw 6 beds. She pushed on the door and it opened. She went in and she lay down under one of those beds, and she waited, and a few minutes later the window blew open and in flew 6 swans. They landed on the floor and they began to blow on each other's feathers. The feathers flew off. They came off just like clothing. And there were her brothers standing before her. And she said, I'm so sorry, but I came to try to help you. I will do whatever I can to change you back into human beings. They said, there's nothing can be done. We will be swans until the day we die. But right then, an old woman appeared in the room. It was the same old woman as you heard about in the beginning of the story. And she said, if there's a will, there's a way. And there's a will and there's a heart in this girl. I will tell you how you can change your brothers back into human beings. There are 6 brothers. For 6 years, you cannot speak, you cannot cry, you cannot laugh. If you cry or you laugh or you speak one word, they will be swans until they die. Each year, you must gather moss down from the swamp, and you must turn it into thread, and you must weave each one of them a shirt. In 6 years, when 6 years have passed in silence, and you have finished the last shirt, they will turn back into your brothers, human beings. She said, I'll do it. And if you want to find out whether she was ever able to break the spell, you'll have to see if you can find this story. Will you help me sing a quick last song, and then we'll make some balloons for you guys, okay? This last song is called The Summer Breeze, Shade Tree, with a far-off fantasy. We all in summer through. Keep clapping next time. I'm gonna hear and goodbye. I'm gonna open up my heart. I'm gonna make it new. Take my funny boat. I'm gonna take my funny boat. I'm gonna attach my series on. I'm gonna read on the summer breeze. Well, down for the mountain, down for the mountain, down for the mountain, over the mountains, the hills, and the fountains, away with the chase away. Rover, rover, see 'em, rover, rover, catch 'em, over the mountains, the hills, and the fountains, away with the chase away. Listen to the hound dogs, heavy bass, sounding right over the way. All night long till the break of dawn, merrily the chase goes on. It's over the mountains, the hills, and the fountains, away with the chase away.